Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are continuing on with my year-end wrap-up series, and today we're going to be ranking all of the concealers that I tried this year. I was going to say I didn't actually try a lot of concealers this year, but I did try 9, and that is a lot. So for context, I do have very dry skin, so that is a big factor in how much I like a certain concealer. And I should also mention my absolute holy grail concealer is the Natasha Denona High Glam. Now, none of these have bested that one. That is still my favorite over all of these, but I did try some really amazing ones this year, so let's hop into it. So coming in at number 9 is a concealer that is very, very pricey. This is from Victoria Beckham, and this is a collaboration with Augustina Spader, and this is the concealer pen. I have the shade FL1. So this past year, I've definitely been trying to get into Victoria Beckham makeup. I shouldn't say trying to get into it. I have just been trying to purchase more of her products. So before this year, I had never tried anything from the brand, and this year I've actually tried quite a few things. And this is just a brand I've been curious about for a while. So when they came out with this concealer pen, I was very, very excited about it. So this is a ClickUp pen, which is definitely not my favorite type of applicator. This does have a lighter coverage, which is fine. I think this actually does look so beautiful on the under eyes. If you like a no makeup type look, if you like a more minimal concealer type look, this is beautiful. But first of all, this has just a really high price point. You only get 0.08 fluid ounces of product, which is not much at all. And I don't necessarily love the ClickUp applicator, but I can work with that. It is a more sheer coverage, which is also fine, but I just don't find that it wore long enough throughout the day compared to some of my other concealers. I have some concealers that will hold up and stick with me for a good 10, 11, 12 hours, whereas this, I feel like by the 6 to 7 hour mark, it starts to wear down. And that's not necessarily a problem for me because I do work from home, so I don't necessarily need my makeup to wear that long anymore. But there was a time when I did work in an office and I would be out of the house for 12, 13 hours a day. So I really, really needed makeup I could count on. And I definitely wouldn't have been satisfied with this product in those situations. For my lifestyle now, yeah, but back then, no. And I know a lot of people are still out of the house for a very large portion of the day. So while I think it is a lovely product and it does look beautiful on the under eyes, I know it's got a lot of skincare ingredients, so it is really good for you. And I'll definitely use it up and wear it because I have it and I do like it and I like the shade. It's just not one I recommend because it is so expensive. It doesn't wear as long as some of the others, and you don't get a ton of product with it. So overall, I don't recommend this. I think it's nice enough, but there's a lot of concealers that are nice enough for much lower price points and that wear much, much longer throughout the day, where you also get a lot more product. So I don't recommend this. It's fine, but I'm not going to recommend it. I definitely did have a good year in terms of not trying any bad concealers, so that was definitely a plus. But coming in at number 8 is actually a mini, and this is from Hourglass. This is the Airbrush Vanish Concealer, and I have this one in the shade Birch. So Birch is actually a really great shade for me, and I do like this concealer, but I found it to be a little bit dry. This definitely gives a really great coverage level. It definitely has a smaller, more classic sort of doe foot. It is a lovely concealer. It definitely blends out beautifully, gives a great coverage. My only issue with this is that it can feel a little bit heavy and it can feel a little bit dry on me. So that's why I rank this a little bit lower. It is good. It is definitely long wearing. It's easy to blend, but it definitely does feel heavier than some other formulas that I have. And that's just not a feeling that I enjoy. So for that reason, I did rank this one lower. It's not terrible. It's just a little bit heavy and a little bit dry. And for my dry skin and under eyes, I do want something that just gives me a little bit more. Like I mentioned, the Natasha Denona concealer that I love so much gives a very, very similar coverage level to this, but the Natasha Denona also does not feel remotely heavy. So that's kind of where my comparison comes from. I don't mind this. I just don't feel like it works great for my skin type. Coming in at number 7 is a concealer that I liked quite a bit when I initially tried it, but as I've been wearing it and testing it out more, I don't know that I loved as much as I thought I did. And this is the Fenty We're Even Longwear Hydrating Concealer. So I have mine in the shade 120N, which is actually a really great shade for me. I kind of like the packaging on this one. I don't like that you can't really stand it up, so it's a little bit more annoying for storage, but if you are someone who tends to lay your products down for storage, you're not going to mind this because this has a nice sort of shape to it where it's never going to roll off your desk, which is something I actually do really appreciate. The doe foot on this one is also a little bit interesting. So it is slanted, and the way it's designed kind of makes it so that you don't get too much product out at once, which is nice for application so you don't end up getting way too much and then having to blend that away. It is really nice for that. This is a very hydrating concealer. This is one that you're definitely going to want to set. I do think this one creases quite a bit, so again, I do recommend setting this. So this is a very lovely thin formula, which is nice. So it does feel very lightweight, but it is almost like it's too hydrating, and I feel like it moves around too easily. It doesn't give the best coverage. I do prefer a little bit more coverage than this gives. It gives more than the Victoria Beckham, but it's not a high coverage concealer by any means. I do prefer the way the Victoria Beckham looks in my under eyes as opposed to this, but I like the price point of this a lot better, and I think this is a perfectly fine concealer. Like I said, it's very comfortable, it's very lightweight, but it doesn't give the most amount of coverage, and I do find that it will move around and it definitely will crease. So I did put this down a little bit lower. It's not a bad concealer, it's just I'm really starting to drill down on exactly what it is I'm looking for in a concealer, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. So coming in at number 6 is from NYX, and this is their Pro Fix stick, and I have mine in the shade 04 Light. So I think this might be my only stick concealer that I've ever owned. This I love for spot concealing because it is a stick, it is a little bit more dry, it's a little bit more stiff, but the way it kind of blends out, it's got almost more of a moussey consistency to it, and it's really, really great for spot concealing. It's so good for that because you can just sort of put it on a spot, it will dry down, and then you can just sort of blend the edges, and it does such a great job of that. I have always loved the NARS Soft Matte Concealer for spot concealing, but this kind of replaced that for me. I just like the way this works. This is obviously a lot cheaper. This doesn't feel overly dry. I don't necessarily love this for under the eyes though, because I do think it's a little bit too thick and dry for under the eyes. But as a spot concealer, this is phenomenal. And as somebody who definitely needs some spot concealing from time to time, I do think this is a great one, and the price point of this one cannot be beat, especially compared to this other range I've got going on here. Coming in at number 5 is from Westman Atelier, and this is their Vital Skincare Concealer. So this actually came out at the same time as the Victoria Beckham, and I wear tested them side by side, not to compare them necessarily because they're very different concealers, but to essentially get 2 wear tests done at the same time, and they both are quite pricey. So the Westman Atelier is definitely less pricey than the Victoria Beckham, but you do get a lot more product. In the Victoria Beckham, you get 0.08 fluid ounces. In the Westman Atelier, you get 0.21. So more than twice the amount of product. I also have the shade Atelier L1. Another thing I didn't love about the Victoria Beckham is that it only has a 6-month shelf life. So the other things against it, I just don't think it's worth it for the price. This one is a 12-month shelf life, which is pretty standard for most of the concealers in my collection. I do like the packaging. It is definitely unique. It does have a pretty standard doe foot on it. It is kind of tapered. It's a really, really nice one. I like the way this looks on my eyes. I do think this one can lean a little bit dry, but it gives such a beautiful medium coverage. It blends very easily. It doesn't crease too badly. I would say it definitely creases more than the Natasha Denona, but it's not the worst for creasing. The reason I put it a little bit lower is, again, I find it to be occasionally a little bit too dry. Not always, but occasionally it can be a little bit drier on my under eyes, so I don't love it as much as some of the others we're going to talk about. I do really like it. I think it's lovely. I'm definitely going to continue to use it because I think it's a lovely concealer. It's just that it can be a little bit dry on me. Again, I have very dry skin, so it takes nothing for things to be a little bit too dry on me. Coming in at number 4 is from Gucci, and this is the Multi-Use Longwear Concealer. I have the shade 12C Fair. So this packaging is definitely some of my favorite. I love this one. This has a teeny tiny little doe foot on it. This does have a paint thinner kind of fragrance to it, so I don't appreciate that. I did expect a fragrance from the Gucci concealer, but I was expecting something a little luxurious and a little less like paint. But otherwise, I think this is a nice one. This is also a thinner formula. This gives more of a light medium coverage, but it is really, really lovely. I have had days where it ends up looking a little bit dry, which isn't my favorite. I do think it's a really great everyday concealer. Just for me, occasionally it does appear a little bit more dry. So this ends up being a little bit more of a summer concealer for me when I'm not quite as dry, and it definitely creases less than a lot of the others that I mentioned. I definitely do like this quite a bit. I just don't like the fragrance. Coming in at number 3 is from Danessa Myricks. This is the Yummy Skin Lift and Flex Concealer. I have the shade 1. So this, in a sense, reminds me a lot of the Fenty that we talked about because it is also very thin, very lightweight, super hydrating. This also has a bit of a unique applicator to it. So the doe foot is actually like a little scoop. So again, sort of designed so that you don't get too much product, but this one is just so good. There is some sort of weird crease resistancy built into this product. It is so beautiful. It's so lightweight. It's so comfortable. It's a really lovely medium coverage. I would say it's on the lighter side of medium, but this creases so little that I am always surprised when I use it. I don't know how this concealer does it. There is the littlest bit, but definitely way less than any of the other concealers we've talked about today. And it just looks so lovely. It also wears all day long. It's very comfortable. And it's just a fantastic concealer. I love this pretty much the moment I put it on my face, and I have really, really loved it ever since. I feel like the Fenty kind of intended to be more like this, but they just kind of missed something where it ends up creasing and moving a little bit, whereas this has that perfect mix of hydration while also being crease resistant, and it just looks so good. So I absolutely love what Danessa Myricks did with this concealer. And coming in at number 2 is a concealer that actually reminds me a lot of the Danessa Myricks, but creases somehow even less. And that is the MAC Studio Radiance 24-Hour Luminous Lift Concealer. So I was so excited to see MAC come out with a new concealer like this, especially because they've got the packaging really, really beautiful and updated. I feel like it's been a long time since they've truly updated their packaging. Their products have essentially looked the same for a really long time. So I was really excited to see this, and it's such a beautiful product. This also has a unique sort of doe foot. It does have a kind of a large doe foot, if I'm being honest. But it is a really interesting shape. Something about this doe foot also keeps you from getting too much out at once. I do think the hole appears a little bit too big, so it does get a little bit messy. But the packaging itself is beautiful. The product is a medium coverage, but it's incredibly lightweight. This almost never creases. If there is truly a crease-proof concealer, this is the absolute closest thing to it. This is absolutely incredible. I love this concealer so, so much. I actually brought this on vacation because I enjoyed it so much. It's just an absolute fantastic formula. And it's hydrating, but it doesn't crease, and it gives a medium coverage. It's never dry. This is just such a good one, and I should mention I have the shade NW10. I can't say enough good things about this concealer. And finally, a concealer that actually gets pretty close to the Natasha Denona is from Laura Mercier, and this is the Real Flawless Weightless Perfecting Concealer in the shade 1C1. This is such a good one. So first of all, I love this shade. This is almost like a pink leaning shade. I've been wearing this so much, especially lately. So the applicator reminds me a little bit of the MAC applicator. So it's really nice to use. It's just the right size. I would say this one is on par with Natasha Denona for creasing. So it creases a tiny bit more than the MAC and the Danessa Myricks, but is still really not that bad. And this gives a really beautiful high medium coverage. I love the coverage I get from this. This also blends out so easy. It is a thicker formula, but it doesn't feel thick and heavy. It's just thick enough to give you a really beautiful coverage. This does remind me so much of the Natasha Denona, but Natasha Denona is actually kind of getting a little bit more difficult to reach in Canada unless you order from her website or Beautylish. So if you are in Canada and you're looking for something very similar to that, I think this is a good one. So I just really, really love this concealer. It does everything that Natasha does. I still go back to that one. I do prefer the applicator on it because it does come to a point, so it is easier to get into those under eyes. But again, the very minimal creasing, the high medium coverage, the blendability, the wear time is all here with this. They're just fantastic concealers. This has definitely been my favorite of the year and definitely a second to Natasha Denona. If I lost the Natasha Denona, I would make sure that I have this because this would be a good enough replacement. I thought for a while the MAC was going to take it, but I do prefer the Laura Mercier just for that extra bit of coverage. But that is it for me today. Let me know down below, what was your favorite concealer this year? What's your favorite in general? Maybe you didn't find a new one this year. Maybe you're just sticking to your holy grails. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!